the primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
AI is a golden opportunity.
How do we ensure that this technology is regulated?
The long arc of technological history is now in an extraordinary new phase.
The AI6 Podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Good morning, Dublin. Before we start, listeners, I do have a little bit of a hoarse throat, so forgive me if I sound a little bit hoarse, but I'm very delighted to be joined on the line this morning with Joanne Sweeney. How are you doing this morning, Joanne?
Well, clearly I'm better sounding than you, Michael. Sorry, you're under the weather.
A little under the weather, but hey, that's the weather we're having in Dublin right now. It's impacting us all. So, Joanne, today we're going to be talking about something that's really interesting and I think is going to be really enlightening for a lot of listeners. It's the, let me get this right, International AI Safety Report. So I suppose, Joanne, there's quite a lot to cover here. How do you want to kick off this conversation?
Well, you know what? We talk about AI a lot on this segment, and AI has been around for mainstream for 3 years, but this is only actually the second international AI safety report of this kind. But it's compiled by more than 100 independent experts from around the world who are really conscious that AI is moving faster than humans can keep up and that policymakers and governments can actually regulate. So I think it's a really important piece of work that's happening every about 18 months because we need some independent expert guidance to let us know what we as humans need to do to ensure that AI systems are safe, that bad actors who are potentially infiltrating them aren't going to cause citizens or nations or democracies harm, but also to educate policymakers and legislators who have the ultimate responsibility of regulation. So I think in terms of a piece of work, it's very important, and it's just been released before the AI summit that's happening in India this month, where a lot of the world's leaders are going to attend.
Yeah, and certainly I had a quick read of it there just before the interview here today, and it is very much, like obviously it's a safety report, so it's talking about a lot about the risks and the kind of current things we know about AI, and that same as that we've talked about on the segment here before, but it is really looking at policymakers and kind of trying to steer this in the right direction. One of the main takeaways that I found from it was, and we kind of talked about this on the show before, Joanne, is about how fast AI is moving, how sometimes it feels like, you know, certain policies either don't want to act too early because we don't know what's happening and then don't want to act too late. So there's a big part of that as part of the report, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a gap. They've identified a real gap for how fast AI is moving versus how quickly regulators are catching up. And as you said, very often they don't know how fast they should act. We've spoken about the EU AI Act and most recently before Christmas, the European Commission rowing back on the deadlines of people having to comply with that. They pushed it out to 2027 because the argument was we're stifling innovation. So we've got this technology that can help change the world. We've got this technology that will in many ways damage the world. And so how we move and act is really, really important. And as we know, having independent research from people who are experts in the field is something that we can really lean into. But they talk about the risks, and that's what's important. It's called a safety report. So
the risk is like 90% of it.
It is all the risk. And that's when it becomes really, really scary. Like we've spoken about online scams before, right? And how we're now getting telephone calls from the UK. There was a whole spate of that. And when we were answering those calls, they were automated conversations from a bot. But the goal was to get us to speak as much as we could so that they could clone our voice and then use our voice against us in future calls. So AI-controlled scams, cybercrime, again, deepfakes, the ability to use the likeness of a person, whether their image, their video, or their voice, and use that in order to maybe extort money, for example, or to disrupt democracy. And then I think another big risk is they say that AI is as important as a utility like electricity. And so you can infiltrate AI and AI systems. We spoke about OpenClaw only a couple of weeks ago, And that's these agents who are creating social networks, but also agents that can disrupt entire systems like banking, medical. So it's right that we have this report. Yeah, it's scary, but we need to face up to those risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And for any of the listeners out there who are interested, you can find the report. It's free online at internationalaisafetyreport.org. It is certainly an interesting read. And one of the things you kind of talked about deepfakes there, Joanne. I kind of want to share these two statistics here with the listeners because I find them deeply interesting, which was in January 2025, this report conducted a survey with participants about kind of identifying AI-generated text and especially here, AI-generated voices. And they found that 80% of the participants mistook AI-generated voices for real speakers. And why I think this is important, we've discussed on the show before. In particular, I gave you that experience one time of a relative of mine who his voice was used to try and trick another family member into giving them money and scams like that. So why do you think like 80% is an insanely high number?
Because the technology is so good. Because the ability to, use our own authentic voice and to clone it, that can now be done in seconds. Like 11 Labs came out only in the past week, and they're the leaders in voice AI.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we can clone your voice in seconds. Which sounds like a fun thing to do, maybe to prank your sister or your friend. But, people are using it for nefarious intent.
Yeah.
And not all of us are on the side for good. So the results of that study are a warning that the AI generation of voice and video is just getting better and better.
What do you know about, if any, Joanne, about any kind of, policymakers or any kind of restrictions and legislations that are responding to specifically, because I know we've talked about it in Ireland, is especially a big problem of these kind of AI-generated voices and voices, particularly of loved ones, scammers using the voices of loved ones trying to scam their family members. Is there any action being put against this?
Well, I mean, it's against the EU AI Act. It's against the law. But as we know with any law, the key is enforcement. And we're just not there. We don't have the capability to investigate, to prosecute, these because they're happening anonymously, maybe by agents. And hey, maybe this is another topic for another day, but Michael, do you think an agent is going to get prosecuted by An Garda Síochána?
Oh, it's very hard to say, isn't it?
No, but if we could track down the person that created the agent that told it what to do, maybe. So you think of all the layers of complexity there. It's hard.
Yeah. Another part of the safety report that I want to kind of touch on as well, particularly in the last couple of weeks, I know there's been a story about Grok AI this week in relation to action being put against Grok AI. But another big part of the safety report is, of course, AI systems being used to generate text, audio, and images and video, especially in relation to Grok AI. Like, there's been such a big news story about this. And one thing that I found concerning that came out of this report was that 96% of deepfake content online was indeed pornographic. Now, I don't suppose that's any surprise, but have we seen any reaction in response to, Grok AI particularly, but just this kind of phenomena online in general?
Yeah, there are many voices in the European Parliament who are calling for the legislation to be expanded, that the creator of the deep fake will be prosecuted. They need to come down hard. And Ireland is holding the EU presidency from the 1st of July. So that just means that we're president of the EU Council, which gives us more influence and weight when implementing legislation. And I think you're going to hear a lot more about that. But for example, Maria Walsh MEP is an MEP from Midlands North West who has been very, very vocal on this, and not just recently, over the past 2.5 years, because she kind of saw this danger coming down the track, and other MEPs have also joined in that. So I think at Europe, there definitely is a focus, and I think there's an appetite at national level. But these institutions and instruments of the state, they work at a very slow pace. And by the time we've legislated, guess what? There's going to be some sort of evolution in the technology where you can circumvent the law.
Yeah. It's a big part of the report as well, isn't it? Is the fact that because AI is progressing and developing so quickly, whether or not any legislation can really keep up, or legislation's acting too early to respond to any future developments.
That's a reality. Absolutely. It's one of the biggest questions. And I'm not sure that anybody has the answer.
Mm.
But maybe if we have some shrewd politicians and legislators who said, well, let's completely change how we was done our business and let's be able to implement emergency legislation in a very shorter space of time. That's something that could happen, because the way it exists now, we've never planned or legislated for this speed of technological advancement. So we need new ideas.
Mm. What was one of your kind of main takeaways, or anything in the report that shocked you?
I think that it's probably where they talk about that safety is improving, but still there are huge gaps. And it just made me ask the question, well, who's protecting us? Or can we be protected? We talk about social media and under 16-year-olds, potentially that being banned in Ireland. And I'm asking the question, but who's saving us from the AI technology? And I just don't know. I really don't have the answer to it. And I think having the evidence from the experts is great, but there aren't a lot of answers. And this is where they hand it over, isn't it, to the legislators? But as I said before, all of society has a responsibility. Like, I've got a responsibility because I've got knowledge to maybe educate the people around me and upskill people.
Of course,
You've
yeah.
got a responsibility by, talking about these topics on the show to your audience. So I think we all have to do something where we can add value and make it better in some way. Because I hate to be a pessimist all the time.
It's all good. It's all good. I suppose for myself, one of the interesting things that I took away from the report was specifically about AI's impact on society. And they kind of mentioned about work and careers. And one of the questions that the report kind of asks is whether or not us as a species, as a society, if we're handing over too much to AI, if we're relying on it too much for decision making and all these menial jobs. It was quite an interesting, I suppose, takeaway from me, because that's a big question that I think about. I'm applying it more in my day to day at work and so on and so forth. It's a big question about whether or not we're handing too much to AI.
Well, that's it. It's human agency versus bot agency, and that complacency. So if we're handing all of that over, what role do we have? But if you listen to somebody like Elon Musk, he would say, well, actually, guess what? In less than 10 years, we won't need jobs because we'll have agents and, you're going to have to find new hobbies.
Mm. Well, I suppose...
Or maybe go to space.
Maybe go to space. Well, I hope...
one of his rockets.
I say Elon is hoping for that because it means he won't have to pay his workers then, will he? But anyway, that's neither here or there.
That's another conversation.
Yes. Joanne Sweeney, thank you so much as ever for your time here on Good Morning Dublin for our digital download. If any of our listeners want to connect with you, learn more about the digital download and your book and podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to digitaltraining.ie or search for AI6 on your favourite podcast platform.
Brilliant stuff. And one closing question here for you, Joanne, is what's one thing that people should keep in mind in aspects to AI, especially in response to this report, when it gets more embedded into our daily lives?
Never forget that it's a bot that's behind that technology and not a human, because we need the humans to survive and to rise. So it's a tool, it's a technology, it's not real. And don't give away your agency.
That's it. Don't give away your agency. And for anyone who wants to check that out, that is the International AI Safety Report.org. Joanne, thank you so much for your time.